Hello everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk About Sleep. Let's Talk About Sleep, the book. Today's video, we're going to talk about a well-known, well-talked-about condition known as obstructive sleep apnea. I covered this before in previous videos from the past, but I thought it's always good to kind of be a little bit more up-to-date. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The next video, we're going to be talking about Cpap cleaners. That's something I always get asked about quite a bit, so we'll touch on that in the next video. Just some housekeeping things that I always say is, if you like this video, please click like, please subscribe to the channel, please share this with your friends and your family. The book is on Amazon. The link is in the description below. And with that being said, let's talk about obstructive sleep apnea. So sleep apnea, the term, it basically means stoppages of breathing that happen when somebody's asleep. Okay, so sleep, it happens when it's asleep. Apnea means a stoppage of breathing, a temporary stoppage of breathing. So we'll talk about essential sleep apnea some other time, but for this video, obstructive sleep apnea, what that is basically back here, okay, back where the tongue sits. That area, that space, when we're awake and talking to each other, is open. Right? So our brain is telling our muscles to stay wide open. So the tongue, the soft tissue, everything kind of stays where it's supposed to be. When we fall asleep, though, the muscles in our body, they relax head to toe. Okay? So the tongue, the soft tissue, when they relax, they kind of fall together. Okay? Or they kind of collapse a bit. All right? So the air space when we fall asleep back here is naturally going to be smaller. Happens to everybody. Okay? Now, some people, because of genetics, because of weight, because of being a man, we'll talk about that in a second, because of alcohol, because of certain medications. Some people, the air space back here gets really tight, okay? And when the air space gets down to this, what happens is you're still able to breathe in and out, but the tissues start to vibrate as air kind of passes in and out, okay? It's like because the air space is tightened, everything kind of vibrates in response. That vibration is what a bed partner would hear as snoring, okay, which is just vibration of your tissue. Now, snoring doesn't hurt you. It annoys other people. What we care about is the next step, okay? So awake, asleep, snoring, sleep apnea, okay? Now, when this happens, the airway has closed off. You don't die from this, right? Your brain says, oh, I'm choking, I got to do something. So what does it do? It makes the person wake up. Or, more likely, so they can have a frank awakening, like we're talking right now, or they have what we call mini awakenings, what I call a mini awakening, which is basically the brain goes from, let's say, deep sleep, okay, to light sleep, all right? So even if the person's not necessarily awake, their body is kind of like in this partial awakening, okay, because it doesn't want to die, right? Now, when the body's in that state, what happens is the blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up, right, as you're transitioning between deep sleep to light sleep, let's say. And over one night, that means nothing, right? Nothing's going to happen to you from that. But over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of nights where, think about what's the point of sleep, right? It's for our body and our mind and our heart and lungs, everything, to get a rest, right? When you have these repetitive stoppages of breathing, it's almost as if somebody is choking you, right? And your body's response to that is to get kind of revved up. So blood pressure goes up, heart rate goes up, even if it's just for a second, right? And you kind of go to this lighter state of sleep. Then you fall back to sleep. And it happens again. And you fall back to sleep. It happens again. All throughout the night. Okay? Now, like I said, over one night, that doesn't mean anything to you, to someone's health. But over many years, this can affect the health. And it can lead to heart attacks and strokes and heart disease and diabetes and all this kind of bad stuff that we don't want. Now, on a night-to-night basis, having sleep apnea, sure, it can leave you feeling tired the next day because, like I see with many of my patients, you'll say, doc, I'm sleeping 8 hours a night, but I feel exhausted in the morning. The reason for that is because the quantity may be okay, but the quality is not, okay? And that's because the airway keeps closing off throughout the night, all right? Now, how common is this? Well, depending on what literature you read, anywhere from 24% of men, 9% of women, and even that may be an underestimation, okay? As we have an obesity epidemic in this country, those numbers are probably higher. But I said earlier, being a man is a risk factor for sleep apnea, and that is true, right? We tend to have more muscular and fatter necks, and what that does, it kind of squeezes in the air space a little bit tighter. Now, women are actually protected against sleep apnea, believe it or not, until the age of menopause, okay? And once that happens, progesterone and estrogen leave the body, okay? They stop being produced at high amounts. And as a result of that, I mean, estrogen has many effects in the human body. One of them is fat distribution. It makes women's fat distribution different than men. When estrogen is no longer there, you can actually get fat deposits around the neck. Not grossly, I mean, kind of more on a microscopic level, but that can be just enough where the airway is a little bit tighter. Okay? Progesterone, amongst its many effects, is a respiratory stimulant. So you take that away, and now the person may not be breathing as deep throughout the night, and those two things together put that risk not to where men are, but close. I've seen patients many times. They'll tell me, the doc, I'm 55 years old. I've never had any of these issues before. I never even snored before. I've been the exact same weight my entire life, but I went through menopause, and then now I'm post-menopause, and all of a sudden I have these problems. And the reason why is because of the hormonal changes. So anyway, that's obstructive sleep apnea in a nutshell, and our goal is to kind of keep the airway open, and I'll talk more about that in other videos, but I just wanted to get people to understand what it is, okay? Now, that's in comparison to like a central sleep apnea, okay? So central sleep apnea, that comes from the central nervous system. We'll talk more about that down the road. That's basically where the brain forgets to tell the diaphragm to take a breath, so the person literally they're not even trying to breathe. Where in obstructive sleep apnea, the person's trying to breathe, but they can't because the airway is closed off. Okay? So it's a very, very common problem. Fortunately, we have things to treat it. I'll make another video about that, but one of them is Cpap, right? Continuous positive airway pressure, CPAP. And we've all seen this as a mask that goes over the nose or in the nostrils. Some of them go over the nose and the mouth, attached to a machine. And basically what this does is it blows pressurized air, which comes down to the back of the throat, forces the airway open, okay? That's very common. The second most common one is what's known as a dental device, okay? And it gets made by a dentist. And what they do is they mold it to the upper and lower teeth, kind of like a sports mouth guard, okay? And when you put that in your mouth, it pulls your lower jaw forward a couple millimeters, and what that does, it takes the tongue away from the back of the throat. And there are surgical options and other things, which I'll talk about in another video, but I just wanted to give you the kind of the basics of what obstructive sleep apnea is, okay? Alcohol definitely will make it worse, okay? Alcohol will disrupt our sleep no matter what, but when we talk about sleep apnea, alcohol relaxes the brain and the body, right? And if the airway here is kind of tight, alcohol is going to make it worse. And many people have told me, and I'm sure you've maybe seen it yourself, people will say, I only snore when I drink. And the reason why is because the alcohol is relaxing further these upper airway structures, okay? Sleeping on the back will make it worse, right? If you're all flat on your back, gravity is kind of working against you and pulling the structures down towards each other and making the airway very, very small. So I recommend people sleep on their side for that reason, or an incline, just avoiding flat on your back. Okay, and weight, as we said. Okay, so that's kind of the nuts and bolts of obstructive sleep apnea. I'll talk more about these other things in other videos, but just to give you a kind of basis now, check out my book on Amazon. Okay, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. I'll try to get to everything as long as it's appropriate, either writing back or make a video about it. And please share this with your friends and family. And until next time, sleep well.